Everybody's got a take on AI in 2025. Marketing in trust sensitive sectors isn't about just following the rules. It's about earning that belief. Uh, Yet there are some mistakes that these marketers keep still doing. What are these common mistakes marketers are making?
One of the bigger challenges is there's so many layers of, red tape in terms of getting messages out there. That we get so caught out with, making it technically correct a lot of the time, particularly in these industries, that we just lose the imagination and then we've lost our audience.
Today on Marketing Growth Fuel, we're joined by Susi O'Neill, founder and executive director of EVA Trust in Tech and the former head of B2B brand content at Kaspersky. With over 2 decades of experience in brand content and communications, Susi has led creative strategies that bring complex technologies to life with clarity and impact. From building trust in high stakes industries to shaping the future of brand storytelling in the AI era, she's redefining how marketing connects with audiences worldwide. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Marketing Growth Fuel, the podcast where we go beyond funnels and frameworks to uncover the people and purpose behind great marketing. Welcome to the show, Suzy.
Pleasure to join you, Vikram.
All right, so Suzy, we hear a lot of buzz about AI and emerging tech these days. There's a lot more that's happening actually behind the scenes as well. Now, you've been working with leaders to build real actionable strategies. So I'd love to start with the present. Now everybody's got a take on AI in 2025, and you've actually seen it evolve from both the tech side and also the communication side. So would love to start with unpacking the reality of it all. Let's bust a few myths. Marketing in trust sensitive sectors isn't about just following the rules. It's about earning that belief. uh, Yet there are some mistakes that these marketers keep still doing. What are these common mistakes marketers are making?
I think one of the bigger challenges you have, particularly in like highly regulated industries or particularly in B2B, is that is there's so many layers of red tape in terms of getting messages out there. There's also a sense that all you have to do is just convey information, and where
Right.
particularly if you're in a high tech space like SaaS, is you just tell people what your product does and you share a few case studies and great, everyone's going to be beating down your door to buy the product. But it's not quite like that. So if say we're dealing with utilities, which would be like highly regulated, or the energy industry, you can't if you're trying to explain a complex piece of new technology, you're looking at, like, for example, a more environmentally efficient way of mining or delivering fuel. You've really got to take your audience back and explain things in not patronizing terms, but in ways that bring the story to life. So, storytelling is a rather heavily used cliche term in marketing, but it really
Hmm.
means getting your message in a way that makes it salient so that audience really understands it. And for a very technical audience, it might be going deep into how the technology works with
Right.
visuals or metaphors or diagrams. But for your layperson, perhaps your end consumer, it might be explaining it in very simple terms, in words and pictures, to
Hmm.
make it easier
Yeah.
for them to digest and understand. But we get so caught out with, making it technically correct a lot of the
Right.
time, particularly in these industries, that we just lose the imagination and then we've lost our audience. So if we're trying to build trust, then if your audience don't understand the complex technologies you're talking about, you've lost them to start with. And when it comes
Right.
to AI, the interesting thing is a lot of organizations are thinking right now, right, we have to have an AI strategy for our product development as well as our marketing. And we have to go really hard on telling our suppliers, telling our stakeholders, telling our investors, telling our customers. But actually, the evidence says something quite different. So Edelman
Hmm.
run a study called the Trust Barometer every year. And the last couple of years has had some fascinating insights about the general public's view of AI, particularly.
Hmm.
And about as many people are enthusiastic about AI as are very unenthusiastic about it. And about a third of people sit somewhere in the middle. But what's really interesting when you dig a bit further detail into the details of that is that around the world, the attitudes are different. So, in what you
Right.
would call the global north countries, they're more cynical, Europe and North America and Canada, Australia, etc. Whereas in emerging economies like India and Brazil and China, they're much more on board with seeing the benefits of new emerging technologies. Their level of understanding is. But when it comes to AI, you need to pay particular attention to make sure that they would be receptive to understanding that your product is now enhanced with AI. But you need to do that again through storytelling, telling people what they get out of it, what's the benefit to them. And I've seen some bizarre stories in my research that I do for my tech newsletter,
Hmm.
including AI powered wine. They're developing an AI powered Barbie doll using large
Yeah.
language models. But you do have to say, does the end audience really want this? And it's okay sometimes to use these tools and technologies in enhancing your workflows or your product line or your marketing. But again, do you need to tell your audience that?
Hmm.
Do,
Yeah.
do they
I
want to
don't.
know that? So that's all part of trust, is really understanding what the audience cares about, what's important to their lives. They don't wake up in the morning thinking about your SaaS product or your
Correct.
regulatory certificate that you've just got. They don't care. So you've got to get them to care. You've got to get them to understand. And you do that through very careful types of storytelling that put their interests at the center.
And off late, I think for the better part of 2025, we've really seen this shift coming up, and that shift is product versus brand. Okay, and in many ways, it is fading, uh, and trust is, like you said, is in many ways emerging as the bridge between them. Okay, so when you're really talking about these high trust industries, how can they build lasting credibility?
Credibility is not something that you're going to just switch flip. Credibility isn't something you're just going to switch a flitch. Oh god, sorry, I hope you can do this. Credibility isn't
Like a
something you're
switch.
going to flip the switch and turn it on and off. It's something that you have to earn through time, and a lot of that is about consistency of messaging. So I would say the discussion about, is it better to focus on brand or product? Well, all the efficacy studies, like Field and Beeden, for example, will all tell you that you need to do both, and you need to sort of do both all the time. Otherwise,
Hmm.
you're going to come out of favor. Particularly, actually, interestingly, in B2B, because the studies always show that when you go out and with your sales product messaging, perhaps only 5% of your audience are in market to buy that product at any one time.
Right.
And if you've got a complex enterprise product or a niche product, it might be way lower than 5%. It might be like 1% or 0.5% of people are actually going to be respond to that sales message at that time. But when they're ready to buy that product, or they're educated about the value of your category, if it's something new or emerging, then you want to be front of mind. And that's the value of brand. And from a content point of view,
Hmm.
consistency is king, or consistency is queen, if you prefer. What I've done a lot of work over the years developing content series for sometimes quite complex technology brands like
Hmm.
cybersecurity. Through time, you can develop an editorial series, different articles or formats that you repeat. Podcasts, like we're doing now, is a great
Yeah.
serialized content idea, because you come at people regularly with the same format and they know the value you're going to get. And when you've done that work of setting up that format, whether it's a series of social posts, a podcast, a video series, an annual report, the next time you do it, it's much more efficient for you to deliver
Right.
report number two or podcast number two, because you've got your workflow set up and you've got your standardization.
You're talking about consistency and repeatability. I believe are very important to the whole sales process and the marketing communications process. I think every time you change your communication, or you change your positioning, you change your messaging, and it could be a social media post to maybe a product feature that you talked about on a site or a podcast. If there is if that consistency is missing, I think it puts the end viewer, consumer of that content in a spot, and that's where credibility is lost.
It's also about memorability.
Right,
So,
absolutely.
particularly in the B2B space, what typically will happen in an organization is a CMO might arrive and he or she says, okay, I want to rebrand. We'll have new logos, new colors, new messages. We'll stand for something else. And that might be right if the brand is struggling. But if the brand is doing okay, it might just need a little facelift. Coca
Absolutely.
Cola hasn't ostensibly changed its messaging or its visuals in all of its history. And a lot of classic organizations and brands that have staying power, they don't make those big changes. It's all about
Right.
consistency. So you show up, and every time you've got the same core values that you stand from, the same message. Be wild and variant in your creative expression of it, but be consistent. So every time you show up, everybody knows that it's your brand. And ultimately, that's where a lot of the wastage is in brand marketing is just rebranding for the sake of it.
Yeah, they do quite a bit actually. This month, the theme that we have at TechDogs Marketing Growth Fuel is about customer-centric messaging, and it ties in a lot to what you're saying as well. So when brands are putting out stories, they ought to be, talking about their features, their outcomes, to real impact, that they'd be able to achieve for brands. And I think. I don't know if a lot of brands are doing this in this day and age, because a lot of messaging that we are seeing today is a lot feature led or product led as against customer led. And I think, like you said, stories, telling that story is the key to be really building those relationships and,
Well, you have to do both ultimately, and particularly as a tech brand. Even if you're a big global tech brand, there's still pressure, and I can tell you that from having worked for an organization like that. There's pressure to deliver sales results in everything that you do. But brand builds over time, so you need to
right.
carry on with your sales messages and your spikes. So again, you're there with a sales message when people are ready for that. But with brand, when you go too hard on the messaging and you try and weave in a lot of corporate sponsor messages, actually you see the efficiency of that communication starts dipping. And I've seen it, certainly seen it. So I've done a podcast previously for the cybersecurity firm Kaspersky, where we placed no adverts in it, but it was really rich story about the history of different technologies with fascinating guests. And it was brilliant and won Webby Awards.
So, Susie, we've set the stage for trust-based marketing now, uh, and what we really kind of, and also just to summarize it, it's not about the message; it's also about the mechanics around it. And that one lever which is changing everything right now is AI.
Of
Um,
course, our favorite two letters, so much joy and so much horror.
yeah, and so AI is often seen as a tool for content and campaign automation, but you're rethinking it as a whole workflow automation. So let's start with the first. How do you think AI has redefined the balance between creativity and automation in marketing strategies?
I think we're just at the very beginning of this journey, Vikram. And any organization that tells you that they're making X amount of efficiencies or success, it's probably not being totally truthful, or they're
True. Hmm.
exaggerating it because again they're trying to prove to their leadership or the board or investments that AI is working. So I run a newsletter called Rethinking the Hype Cycle, where I gather a lot of dystopian news, celebratory hype news about AI, and trying to dissect that and say, what does that really mean for the business and marketing leader? What practical actions do you take? What I can reassure people at is that in many parts of the world, perhaps America are a little bit further ahead of the curve. China possibly don't have quite enough insights, but those two countries are definitely leading the charge with AI, and they're moving on quite quickly and embedding it into their cultures and their working cultures. But most of the rest of the world is still really at the first base at best,
Right.
maybe
Yeah.
progressing towards that second base slowly. And a lot of it's because most of the investment so far has been in companies like AI, sorry,
AI.
like OpenAI, who produce ChatGPT, data centers. We're seeing data centers the size of Manhattan being created across the states and other parts of the world. But we're not seeing the end benefit in the business. A lot of businesses are investing in consultancy right now, particularly the big firms are using like your McKinsey's, Boston Consulting Group to effectively tell them, yes, it's okay to invest in
Hmm.
AI, but no one's getting the actual end tangible benefit. So a lot of money is going into the hype machine right now, and a
Hmm.
few small little items are trickling out of that machine at the other end. And that is the starting point of any tech innovation. So we can't be too cynical about the
Yeah.
benefits of it. But the idea that all the complexity of hundreds of years of industry processes that we put together that are quite complex, that fit around
Hmm.
difficult regulatory frameworks, particularly for international companies, that you can just pressure that you can just push a button and suddenly everything's going to be more efficient or better with AI.
It's not going to
That's
happen.
the
Yeah.
dream that the open AI and other companies would love you to believe. It's hype and it's a myth. So the most
Hmm.
important thing you can do is to start the activities now by thinking about the repeatable processes,
Hmm.
how you can make those better. But importantly, my mantra is about inclusive AI. So
Hmm.
it's about training AI literacy, bringing everyone in the organization, but
Hmm.
understanding that historically, some parts of your organization are being poorly served by AI in their
Hmm.
lives, particularly women, particularly people who effectively aren't white, particularly people who are older.
Hmm.
They might need a bit more nurture to believe that this AI transformation that's happening in the business will be to their benefit, and they're not going
Benefit.
to
Yeah.
just end up being automated and then replaced by a robot. And
Hmm.
when we talk about inclusive AI, I talk about the idea that if everybody is getting benefits and getting that intensive training, you can raise all boats. So
Hmm.
if everyone in the organization is much more confident, has access to the best tools, knows how to use them, we move to what's called AI fluency. And
Hmm.
then we might start to get some results. But at the moment, we're just in a situation where teams are having tools thrown at them. I saw a Microsoft study today. Only 1 in 2 people are getting any training, and that's fairly
Hmm.
consistent with other research that I've seen, even in the last year. So these numbers need to go up, people.
Yeah.
You need to say that 100% of your desk-based workers have had a certain amount of AI training, and then the next year you put them on track for about 20 hours of professional training to give them that AI fluency, and thinking about then the models that you can use in the business. And marketing, there are a lot of low-hanging fruits. Sorry to
True.
say this
True.
to post production people, but all that format shifting where you change the shapes of videos and create
Yeah.
social posts based on, like, even promoting this podcast, you're going to promote a lot of other content assets. And automation to an extent can be done by setting up tools in the right way, setting up processes in the right way. And for me, that's quite exciting because that means
Hmm.
that our marketeers can focus a bit more time on making the creative really good, hopefully not using AI in that
Not
critical ideation and production process, or using it minimally.
but what we are really talking about is, in my way, in my opinion, the creation side of it. It's about how we are working as marketers. Okay. But then there's the other side of it, which is, the people whom we are creating content for, the way the content is being discovered, and I mean, it's an important part of the equation, right? So you're creating content for people who want to consume it. And I believe there's a lot of change that's happening in how content is being discovered. Okay. And I would love to understand, what that means for tech marketers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert on SEO, but it's wise to pay heed to those who are talking now more about GEO, which is generative AI
Generally,
discovery
yeah.
and search. Now, my background is in content, and so I look at it of like, how do you create the best content? How do you make it as discoverable as possible? And I think we're in a really interesting space for content marketing, perhaps the most interesting it's been in the last 10 years or so. But we used to create what's called mid-funnel educational content. So it would
Correct.
be saying, what are people searching for? Like, how to use ChatGPT to put together a marketing funnel, for example. And everybody out there would be creating exactly the same content if their product's aligned with it. And you'd end up with lots of people competing with very similar mid-length, uninteresting text-based content. So we can forget all that now because AI has replaced you if that's the content you're creating. But it's splitting it in two. So we'll see at one side, we need to still create a lot of content and publish it on websites, but it's less of it for the human and more of it for AI. If we want AI
Correct.
to scrape our sites, we still need to produce information, but in very much more technical formats. So FAQs and using different kinds of schema and markups on the websites. So it
Right.
actually makes it easier for AI bots to find that content. But when you show up in an AI search, you're in a category of one. There's no
Mm.
there's 10 options here unless somebody has prompted to say, give me the 10 best SaaS tools for email automation, for example.
Yeah.
Most people will just say, I want to do some email automation. What do you recommend, ChatGPT? You need to be the one business that gets recommended and
Absolutely.
found. And
Absolutely.
no one really knows how to do that, but you still need to show up and have presence. So you still need to have really good, well structured web content that's properly designed and thought about. But now some of our readers are AI and some of them are human. Now we flip that on the other side, and that means we free up more time to think about PR, more brand based communications, and things that are harder for AI to actually steal.
Correct.
That can be real life events, it can be extraordinary, more high production value videos, or different kinds of events, or more imaginative types of content. And also, research is going to become super important. So, you build authority in your topic area by owning
Right.
the data and the facts around it. So, again, an annual study that you do around your topic area can help you find fame, both because people are interested in the results and want to know about it, but also AI will love it and it will be
Absolutely.
serving it up attached to the name of your brand. So again, no one really knows how to be successful and findable. And if you find that as a tech firm, you're getting approached by people saying things like, "Oh, I'll get you top of ChatGPT, or I'll get you the top of the results in Claude," don't believe them. It's another kind of snake oil that we've seen. Those of us who've been in marketing a while have seen through many, many waves. No one really knows. But if you've got a good if you've got a good AI consultant, or also search consultant who really understands the trends and where they're going,
Hmm.
over time we're going to find that there are some best practices that as web creators we can adopt.
But then the next question is that, how do you build marketing systems, because everything's changing, right? So how you're creating is changing, how your consumer discovery is changing. Okay, so how do you build marketing systems or ecosystems that are going to, not lose their core? So, at one point you're looking at brands that need consistency, but marketing teams need to be agile because of the, tech development that's happening. So how can teams remain agile and responsive to these emerging trends?
It is a very challenging point that we're in as marketeers, really, Vikram, because we have to move at this quick pace because of the pace of change of how AI is impacting us day to day. But if we don't have that consistency of what our brand stands for, we're just going to be like wheat blowing in the wind, and no one's going to remember us. And remember all the factors around AI as a discovery tool. That's also impacting all of your competitors at the same time. So again, if you do nothing, you will move behind. So being an ostrich with your head in the sand is not a good strategy. But equally, just rushing away and trying to make everything automated and hoping that that will work, or paying a company to get you the top of the AI search results, is also not a great strategy. So we need to sort of have a two-tier system. We need to keep going with our stronger annual brand campaigns, and our particular big pieces of research can be super important right now to really show up and
Absolutely.
create meaning, because we're also in a world where people don't trust, because there's disinformation everywhere in our everyday lives. And we've got politicians who have gone from, occasionally saying something that might self-serve them to just saying things that are they're blatantly not true. So there's a mistrust that everyone is having in their lives right now that we need to be mindful of as well. And showing up consistently with strong messages, strong research is one good tactic. But in terms of like how you lead those marketing teams through this change, we've got to be sensitive, and that's what inclusive AI is as well. Is understanding that this fear of things moving faster and faster and faster can be quite scary to people, because the messages can be quite negative. In the wave that I grew up working in, we built websites for the first time using HTML,
Yeah.
and it was an exciting space because we were like telling people for the first time around the world about in my case I was working for a record label. We were telling people about artists and what their releases were, whereas now the message is sometimes very positive about all the change we can do using AI, how we can make it better for our lives, how it can help us with advice, how it can help us shape and craft things in our work and lives. But then the other flip message from the media that we get is that, hang on, this is going to destroy all jobs. And Sam Altman is a particularly evil villain in this cause, because he was the one that said a year ago that AI will replace 95% of marketeers. And what that says to me is that's somebody who's never been in a marketing team. Because if you've done marketing, it's not about the creative process and the production, it's the tiny bit. It's the research, it's the stakeholder review, it's checking with your subject matter experts, it's checking with your boss and what their daughter thought about the color and what their dog, whether they like it or not. So a lot of it is you're chaperoning and trying to craft something from many, many different perspectives. And that is the
Hmm.
skill of the marketer. And that's not going to change because of AI.
I don't remember, was it the CEO of Microsoft or was it the CEO of Google who said that about 30% of their code today is being written by AI agents?
It was Google did it in an earnings call. They said 25%, but some
Yeah,
of the
so that, yeah.
critics were saying, but it's not 25% of code that's actually any good.
Hmm.
So there's a sense there about the cleanup process. It definitely hits developers, but it definitely hits you when you're dealing with visuals and copy as well.
Yeah,
Now, I have to say, as a regular writer, creating quite a lot of words every week for a newsletter I produce, I do use AI to help me off the starting block and help me shape and find things. I wouldn't
right.
say it saves me so much time, but it helps get me moving. But the challenge that we've got is the what comes out of this AI sausage machine
Hmm.
is what I call 50 shades of beige. So everything's going to read the same. Now, there are
Right.
workarounds as marketeers. You can work effectively reverse engineer with your AI tools by showing them good practice, by creating brand guidelines, not that are designed for the human, although the human will read
Mhm.
them, but also specifically designed for AI. So it's created and structured the documents in a certain way that makes it easier for AI to understand what the examples are and what the meaning is. So you can do this reverse engineering, and you can definitely get much better results than the straight out of the box briefing. And again, that's what AI education and literacy is about understanding how you craft something that's more unique and specific to you as a writer or you as a brand. But having said that, it will still revert to all the same expressions and phrases at the moment. We can't seem to
M
get away
dashes,
from
M
those M
dashes.
dashes. We get away from some of the cliches became so well known, like delve, for example.
Right, yeah, and
The
imagine,
the
this birds.
tapestry and the
Yeah, yeah,
orchestration. So, in effect, I think you see that coming out of tools a lot less. I use Claude quite a lot, and I am starting to see that less. But for me, what I actually notice more, and there's research that linguists are actually doing that's fascinating right now, is that we're reflecting the expressions that we get in AI. So, if you put in a piece of copy and say, "I want this for social," it'll say, "It's not a disaster, it's a catastrophe of by all
yeah.
proportions. This isn't the best thing in the world. It's awesome. It's amazing. It's all going these like A B comparisons. Always expressions and lines and verbs are always in threes. Now, as a
Hmm.
writer, you're taught to mix it up a bit. Your sentence structure should be different. You shouldn't always be following the same formulas, but it's been taught based on formulaic, almost like essay like content, but
Absolutely.
also very boring B2B tech articles out there. So
Yeah,
if you produce more boring B2B tech articles, well, you can, but your audience aren't necessarily going to respond to that. It's not necessarily going to make you more findable because of the way search is changing very, very quickly.
correct.
So every time you put something out there as a B2B tech brand, you need to be thinking, is this creating something new? Is it relevant? Is it interesting? Am I changing the shape a bit? So if everybody's zigging, am I zagging and doing it in a
Yeah,
disruptive way? And we do this with social media to get noticed in the feed. And we have to think about this in all aspects of content production now. So everything we produce, is it creating consistency? Maybe for a sales message is important, but for a brand message, when people don't know or care about you, you might want to do something very radical or very different. So it could be a really exciting time to stand out from the crowd right now.
the way I'm looking at it, in the world which is drowning in AI, I think brands ought to start creating something that's more authentic and more relatable.
And putting mistakes in is something that's happening right now as well. Because we talk about influencer content or authentic content, but they're saying that like students are putting spelling mistakes back in AI generated essays to try and
Get away
get
with,
over
yeah,
the
yeah,
filters. That's a bad example of it. But a good example is not always making everything so perfect, because we're used to seeing everything cut up, and even pauses and ums and ahs in podcasts and
absolutely.
videos are just taken out and cut. But if sometimes you put in a bit of space, a bit of realness, That could work really well, depending on, again, the format and the medium, the message you're trying to get across. But it's all about pattern disrupt. You can't
Right,
just be the same as
absolutely.
everyone else. Otherwise, you're going to, at best, get the same results.
And when you're trying to be this authentic and relatable, to your audiences, so we talked about, you mentioned categorically that you could be doing your own research, your own point of view, which could be very different from the crowd, is one way to go about it. But what are some other things that brands can do, to, in that sense, build that authenticity and relatability?
Well, one of the challenges brands have is that we're moving to more of an influencer individual
Hmm.
focus. And that's been actually the case for a while with Google search trends as well. So putting experts and authors behind articles has also been a really good way of like raising yourself in
Correct.
search results. That's going to become even more important in the AI age, and where we're starting to see even videos being produced with avatars. If you have experts in your business who will put themselves and their faces and their voices forward,
Hmm.
use them, nurture that talent. Also think about working with influencers. I work with brands sometimes in terms of helping getting the message out about their products. And that's been
Right.
the case in the beauty industry and B2C for many years, but it's starting to come to B2B. So
Hmm.
if you can nurture your in-house influencers, great. They don't have to be board members. They could be just topic or technical experts, or even junior members of staff sometimes for particularly employee engagement messages. But
Hmm.
think also about what the external influencers that you might want to work with. And a lot of it's about aligning with. So your brand aligns with the expert or puts forward the expert's point of view.
Hmm.
It's not necessarily about the brand logo being the most important thing. It's not like we're trying to sponsor a parade here. We're trying to convince people that we're on their side. So we're ready when they want to buy.
All right, so that's great strategy till now. I'd love to kind of wrap things up a little with a little fun. Time for a little round to test your instincts, Susie.
Okay,
Coming up
let's
next
go.
is coming up next is what we call the this and that marketing mashup. I'm just going to give you two options or choices to choose from. Whatever you think is your go-to, just go for it. Ready when you are.
Okay.
Brand storytelling or product messaging,
Brand storytelling, of course.
webinars or live panels.
Webinars purely because you can do more with the playback and it can reach more people, but I prefer to go to live events.
Organic reach or paid campaigns?
Organic reach, but it's getting very difficult, so you can't avoid the pay.
LinkedIn or industry media?
Industry media, because LinkedIn has been a very bad channel right now for authentic voices.
AI tools or human creativity?
I'd love to say both, but if you're pushing me, I'll say human creativity will trump it.
Case studies or testimonials?
Testimonials, because they are your case studies.
Video content or long form blog posts?
Oh, very hard. I've done both and I love both, but I think video content possibly is a bit, yeah, it's a bit more fun because you can develop long form content off the back of it.
Monthly reports or quarterly reviews?
Oh, who wants to read those monthlies? I think let's go for quarterly or even annual.
Global campaigns or localized campaigns?
Global campaigns, but they should be optimized for local needs.
Short form content or long form content?
I'm a bit of a long form content queen. I've made my name through doing long form.
Brand campaigns or lead gen campaigns?
Oh, obviously, brand campaigns.
Okay. In house teams or agency support?
Again, I have done in house teams, but with the best freelance talent that you can afford to buy.
Email marketing or social media?
Email marketing for me, because once you in people's inboxes, you've got more of an opportunity of influencing them.
The last one. Creative ideas or data driven plans?
Creative ideas.
And a fun wild card question. If your brand voice had to be represented by a fictional character, someone that totally gets your tone and value, who would it be?
I like possibly Sherlock Holmes because I like to
Okay.
interrogate things, but I've got a bit of wiliness, and I'm also a not brilliant musician like he is. So yeah.
One of our past guests, I think I said Winnie the Pooh. And I like to say Scooby Doo because we're always out for adventures, speaking to people,
I'm getting
seeking
into
knowledge.
scraps.
Yeah.
But if it wasn't for those pesky customers, we'd have definitely made our quarterly targets.
And that's a wrap on this episode of Marketing Growth Fuel. Huge thanks to you, Susie, for joining us today. I think your insights have been very valuable for the audiences.
My pleasure.
Uh, any parting words?
Yeah, don't panic about AI. Get going with it. It's what I call wait. You're working on AI transformation. So don't stop. Think about what you're doing, but don't let it overwhelm everything that you're doing as a marketeer.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.